we live in our head, right? We are trying to solve problems. We're trying to be rational and fix things. And it's all logical, rational, and it's not emotional. And when you can drop into your body, then you can more accurately or more easily connect with your emotional state. I'm Sara Raymond, and you are listening to the Lifestylist Podcast.
Here we go, rocking and rolling with another episode of the Lifestylist Podcast, The Power of Hypnosis and Guided Meditation with Sara Raymond. This is episode 399, man. We are teetering on episode 400. I promise to keep the hits coming. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find show notes for this very episode at lukestory.com/mindful movement. Today's guest, Sara Raymond, is a trained hypnotherapist, Pilates, yoga, and meditation teacher, as well as founder of the Mindful Movement. She's become an oasis for those looking to tap into their inner calm, develop a positive mindset, and heal from the stress that's blocking life's fulfillment. She's discovered, and we talk about the fact that simply knowing what you want isn't enough, and has committed her life to helping others break free from their inner turmoil that is keeping them stuck. So we're going to get unstuck today, guys. This was a really fun interview. We made our way through so many practices of inner peace and healing that I'm sure you're going to walk away with some very practical tips for going deeper within. Here's what we cover. First, the hypnotherapy session that Sara and I concluded just before recording, and that was in itself a pretty incredible experience, to say the least. We also talk about Sara's path to becoming a hypnotherapist and some of its many benefits, her relationship with meditation and how it led her to create the incredible and really huge online community called the Mindful Movement, and how she navigates running a successful business with her husband, Les, which I find really interesting. I think as more online entrepreneurs emerge and we can do it from home, we might want to try and do that with our partner, and they seem to have figured it out. We also explore Yoga Nidra and the important connection between movement and meditation. Oftentimes we think about meditation as something being very physically still. Well, she's going to dispel that, or at least expand that for you. And we talk about how you can use her mini meditations to overcome stress and anxiety, even as a complete beginner. In fact, leading up to this episode, I did a number of her short 8-10-minute meditations, and I actually really enjoyed them. So it was fun to kind of get inside the mind of the person that created them. We also cover common misconceptions about meditation that might keep many people from finding their practice, and the truth about using hypnosis to overcome bad habits and even addictions. How hypnosis can help with sleep disorders, unhealed trauma, and physical pain. And finally, how her important work has impacted the lives of her and Les's children and their family life, and so much more. If this here episode inspires you, as I trust it will, you can book a session with Sara at themindfulmovement.com, and I got to tell you, I highly recommend it. Hypnosis is a powerful way to expand your life and vision, and has proven itself to be beneficial not only for me, but for thousands of other people worldwide. So again, if you want to check out Sara's work yourself, you can do so at themindfulmovement.com. And with all of that being said, let's take a deep breath together, shall we? I don't think I've ever done this before, but let's just do it. I feel called. Ready? Inhale. And exhale. It's incredible what a moment of breath and presence can do for you. Take that presence and join me in this inspiring conversation with Sara Raymond. Sara, well, what a day it's been for us.
Yeah, it's been a day.
I don't think I've gotten to know people more than I've gotten to know you today, but I have to say, like, with just meeting someone, I don't think I've ever had someone get to know me at such depth as we did today prior to this recording. So for those listening, one of the many things our guest Sara does is hypnosis. And so we just emerged out of me laying on the studio couch there and going into the quantum ethers in the most fantastic way. So I'm going to do my best to come back to earth and be a proper podcast host. But thank you so much for coming by today, and thank you for that experience. It was incredible.
Well, it was my pleasure. And thank you for your willingness to trust me. You know, not having ever met me, you, like you said, you did share a lot with me, and you know, you were willing to be open and vulnerable, and I really appreciate that. And I think that allowed the process to really unfold in a beautiful way. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. It did occur to me at certain points. I was like, I just met her. Like, I'm telling her all kinds of intimate details about my self-perceived limitations and you know, things like that. But I'm also kind of a, you know, transparent person also.
Yeah. Well, generally when people come to see me, they might not know me personally, but they have listened to a recording that I've created, or, you know, even some people will say, oh, I feel like you're my best friend. Like, I've listened to your voice in my ear dozens and dozens of times. So, you know, you had a little bit of a different experience.
I also actually, you know what, that probably was the case with me too, because over the past week, knowing that I was leading up to this interview, I've listened to a number of your guided meditations. I actually did one this morning.
Yeah.
I found a longer one. Some of them, I think it was on your podcast. And some of them are like 8 minutes, 10 minutes. I've done a couple of those. So today I was like scrolling to find a longer one, because usually I like to do about 20 minutes, and I found it. And it was awesome.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of you today. Okay, so let's just, I want to jump into the hypnotherapy thing, really, because even though I've done a bit of it in my life, and it's definitely benefited me, crazily enough, I've not yet done a podcast about it.
Oh.
Yeah, which is super cool. And I'm excited about that, because I think it's such a useful tool for people. So how did you first get into hypnosis? Where'd you hear about it? What did you have to do to learn how to do the witchy stuff that you just did with me?
Well, the first like introduction to it was through my mom. She actually used hypnosis, you know, many years ago when I was a kid, to quit smoking. And it was extremely effective for her. And then she used it again in some of her weight loss journey. And so I kind of just assumed like that was something that people did. They go to see a hypnotherapist or a hypnotist, and they, you know, are able to successfully make changes or quit habits that they don't want anymore. So I kind of always have been a believer, I guess, just by default, because she was a believer. And then really, I personally found meditation and hypnosis in my early 30s, I guess it was, when I needed to, I guess I wanted to understand myself a little bit better. I was a fairly young mom. I had my first child at 22, and she was a surprise. And I was like, oh, I'm a mom, you know. And I wouldn't change that for the world. That was one of my greatest life lessons and experiences for sure. But I didn't have like my 20s to like figure out who I was and figure out what was important to me and use those values to make decisions. I just kind of did whatever I needed to do to be a parent, be a wife, be a, you know, a business owner, without really understanding who I was. So, you know, when all my friends were like going out to bars and finding themselves, I was at home as a mom. And then came my 30s, and I was like, oh, now I have some time to like really explore me. At that point, my children were a little older, and like they didn't need my attention all the time. So when I started to really want to get to know myself and understand like what was important to me and where I wanted my life to go, that's when I discovered hypnosis and meditation. And for me, hypnosis, I found to be not more effective, but more accessible, because it was giving me something to do while in a meditative state. Whereas when I first started meditating, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't understand this, you know, and I just wanted to do something. So hypnosis, because it felt like more goal oriented or more like I was actually doing something, it felt more accessible to me. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. I definitely practice meditation, and I get a lot of value out of it. But initially, I was like, you want me to sit still for how long? And like just be? I don't understand. That was really hard for me.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And it's funny because when we did our session today, and this wouldn't have been true when I first started meditating, but I've been meditating for a really long time out of necessity, not virtue. I'm not like bragging about my meditation practice, but it really was life-saving for me. But I found in our session that I just at times wanted to just stay in that sort of theta, zoned out, half awake, half asleep state. And I had the opposite. I was like, oh, she asked me another question, and then I'd have to summon the subconscious and participate, right? And so I was kind of like, it was fine, but it was the opposite experience of that. I was like, no, I just want to meditate.
You were pretty mellow.
Yeah, but
chill.
We had some work to do.
Yeah.
With your mom introducing you in her desire to overcome smoking and losing some weight and such, was your mom like a new agey hippie kind of person?
No, I wouldn't categorize her that way. I think that she has always been very open-minded and willing to do things to help herself. Maybe other people in her generation, maybe I'm stereotyping a little bit, but there's sort of like a generation of people who just want to take a pill, right? Like just go to the doctor, get their advice, get the pharmaceutical, and then that'll be the way to solve the problem. Whereas she has always been very open-minded to try different things like hypnosis. And this is like early 80s when she was trying hypnosis for the first time. So, it was a long time ago. It wasn't like it wasn't popular at that point, but she was willing to try it and it worked for her. And she's willing to learn new things and explore different routes, different avenues to help herself. And she's just, I guess, always been that way.
Yeah, that's cool. So the smoking bit worked for her though, huh?
It did, yeah. She smoked through my pregnancy, my older brother, and then between myself and my younger brother, she was like, okay, I need to be done with this. And so she quit, and hasn't had a cigarette since.
I'm going to remember that because I did manage to quit smoking years ago, but I find I use nicotine very habitually now. So I might be ringing you up for another session. Yeah. I keep telling myself when we move in our house, then like it's like this narrative I have with myself. I need it right now to just take the edge off. And then once we move in the house, I'm going to quit, but now we're getting very close to that. And I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to quit. This is nice. So I might be hitting you up on that. Yeah. Have you ever heard of anyone having success with nail biting?
I have not personally worked with anyone, but I do believe that one of the people I trained with shared a story about a young person, like a child. I do believe, Yeah,
I have that disgusting habit sometimes, and I'm really, really not happy about it. I'm ashamed of it. Interestingly enough, when I used to smoke cigarettes, when I was a kid, I bit my nails, just nervous, personality, I guess. And then when I smoked cigarettes for forever, then I never bit my nails.
Something else to do with your hands.
Yeah, and then when I quit smoking, I started biting my nails. And then I had like a relapse of smoking many years ago. And then I quit biting my nails. And then when I quit smoking again for real, the final time. We're going to take a quick break to share with you one of the most unique and effective products in my health arsenal. It's also one that I've been using for a very long time, over the past decade at least. It's called Oceans Alive from Activation Products. It's a premium brand of 2 specially cultivated, hand-selected marine phytoplankton strains grown in a photobioreactor. The nutrient density of this microalgae is insane. It's loaded with a wide array of vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, and amino acids. Oceans Alive is the purest, most potent marine phytoplankton supplement in the world. It's fresh, totally raw, and pure. They use a scientifically proven natural method of stabilization that doesn't require any heat, cold, freeze drying, or any processing at all. My experience with Oceans Alive is a very noticeable feeling of untapped energy and focus. It's naturally packed with nutrients that boost your health in a multitude of ways. Its natural antioxidant content reduces oxidative stress, which is why this is my number one air travel companion. It also promotes healthy cellular growth and development and also boosts cognitive function. Activation Products has been one of my go-to companies for a very long time. They have a no BS approach and are all about giving people definitive information, the best quality raw material, then letting you decide for yourself. They just provide you with the knowledge and the most innovative products so you can take the lead in creating your own life equity and longevity. You can swoop up some of this Oceans Alive over at activationproducts.com and use the code Luke15 for 15% off any product. That's activationproducts.com, and the code Luke is a one-time use, so use it wisely. So you spent your 20s kind of being a mom, and so you didn't get that period of self-discovery, which, by the way, I had my whole 20s to discover myself and did jack shit with it, except destroy myself. But I find many people that really commit to a yoga practice, like I know you have, in meditation or something like hypnosis, they have some sort of, pain to purpose, rock bottom, desperation that is the impetus for them to find discipline. Because these practices, well, I don't know about hypnosis, but meditation definitely takes discipline in order for them to pursue it with, effectiveness and consistency. Did you have anything going on in your life that was motivating you, or was it really just like, hey, I feel like I'd like to get to know myself a little better?
Yeah, I don't have a rock bottom story really. I was the yoga teacher that would avoid the meditation aspect. I was like non-spiritual, it made me actually very uncomfortable in a way. So I avoided that at like all costs. I really, only when I wanted to like understand myself better did I recognize that I already had the tools. I already had the knowledge. I just needed to do it. Right. I think I've always been sort of someone who loves to teach, and that's my avenue to learn. It sounds a little backwards.
No, I totally understand that.
But like for me to really understand a concept or an idea, I need to go as far as being able to teach it, to embody it. And so I think that teaching yoga for I think I taught for about 5 years before I was like, oh, what's this meditation thing about? I just wanted to do the movement. And I've always been a very athletic person. I played sports when I was younger, and that was an avenue for me to explore myself as a younger person. And so when I started teaching yoga, I was like, I'm just going to do it for the workout, the exercise. And I didn't feel comfortable with even Shavasana. As a teacher, I would be like, okay, well, I have to do this. So I'll give everyone 2 minutes and then we're going to, get out of here. It just really felt uncomfortable. It felt like religion to me. And that's always been something that it just wasn't in my life as a kid. And so the idea that I was going to have religion in my yoga class was very uncomfortable. So I just avoided it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I mean, I know now that that's not really what it is, but.
For sure. Yeah. When I first started doing yoga, I think it was probably at a gym, and it was, well, I should be flexible, Right. And then I found a studio. It was called Dancing Shiva in LA with this guy, Mas Vidal, who's actually was one of my first guests. And he's an Ayurvedic practitioner. He's very serious about his Hatha yoga practice, and his whole perspective, which really, I think, changed my relationship to yoga, was that the physical postures serve one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is for you to become present enough and fluid enough in your body so that after the physical movement stops, you can sit and meditate, right? I was like, oh, because I was already meditating at that point, but I never kind of married physical movement with that mindfulness aspect. But it started to really click because, man, after his classes were grueling, just super hard, not like power yoga, but just demanded a lot of attention and discipline for you to hold the postures. And there was, headstands and handstands and all these things where you really had to be present. And God damn it, I could meditate pretty damn well after that, and I was able to see, oh, he's really tapped into the ancient technology of this yoga in a profound way. And it did help me to adopt my meditation practice to be able to, ignore those impulses of the body to be fidgety and restless, or to sit there and go, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be doing something, So going from that, it's pretty crazy to me, just doing some research on you. You've got a YouTube channel with like 660 something thousand subscribers. You've got this robust website with like seemingly an endless treasure trove of content. I mean, I'm on there trying to research and I'm like, finding my topics, zillions of videos, blog posts, so much going on. How did your YouTube channel and the site and the business you now have, how did that come to be?
Definitely an evolution. So it's been about 5 years since I published the first YouTube video, and that was upon suggestion from my son, who at the time was like 10 or 11. And I really wasn't trying to like start a YouTube channel with the intention to like get all these subscribers. I really just was looking for an avenue to take recordings and share them with, at the time, some Pilates instructors that I was training and working with. And I just didn't have the like technological understanding of like Dropbox or any other, web share program. So my son said, you just need to put it on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? And, kids are like super fast with technology. He's like, you just do this, 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 this. I'm like, okay, stop, slow it down, like really teach me what I'm supposed to be doing here. And it was the most simplistic version of iMovie. And it was literally an audio clip that became a video that I published. And so I shared it out with the people that I wanted to share it with. And then somehow other people started finding the videos and listening to them. And I'm like, what is this YouTube thing? And how do I like actually use it? So I had to learn how to use YouTube and figure out how to like grow an audience. And so I did. And like over the years, it grew. And actually, when I started the YouTube channel, what I really wanted to do was have a podcast where I was interviewing people and learning from them. But I quickly realized that I couldn't do both of those things at the same time. I had, at the time, and still do, I own a Pilates and yoga studio in Maryland. And so I couldn't do all the things. Like I couldn't be the mom and the wife and the business owner and the podcast host and the YouTube. So I had to pick. And, I found it really kind of fascinating, the like business or the almost like it was a game or the strategy behind YouTube. So I went down that rabbit hole and learned a lot, and here I am today with.
That's a crazy amount of audience members.
It is. It is.
Looking at like the views on your stuff, and then I don't know. You just have so many different. As I said, so many different. I know you focused on YouTube, but I love it when I can like research someone to interview them, and it's actually too much content for me to even zero in on. So you've done a great job of doing that. And also in looking at your site, you've got the mindful movement community, which I don't have access to, but what goes on in there? How have you turned something that was just like a viewer watching you and Les's work, your husband Les, versus like the interaction and that sense of community? Because I think that's something that's really important for people that are taking on a new framework of thinking and feeling and working on themselves in terms of mindfulness, meditation. And oftentimes people sort of get lost in the fray because it's just them and their own self-discipline to do it or lack thereof. And I think the community is a hugely important part of that.
Sure.
So I'm curious how that's developed and what does that entail for you guys?
Yeah. Well, the saying is, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when you want to make changes in your lifestyle, you find people that are already doing it or that are on the same path as you, and you build a community. You gain support, and you're held accountable, and you can learn from each other, and help each other along the way. So that's kind of the intention behind it. We originally started with a Facebook group, which you can kind of curate your social media feed to be positive, to be the content that nourishes you and doesn't stress you out and make you compare yourself to other people. Or you could have social media that detracts from your life. And we were trying to create a community where there were like-minded people, and you were gaining support and accountability. And the Facebook group wasn't really the community that we had hoped, the interaction that we were looking for. So we took all of our content and put it into a membership platform where there can be more curated interaction among people that, all practice meditation and yoga and want the same things and the support, where you're not going to have these polarized conversations going on that you might on social media.
Totally. I have a Facebook group. It's funny, I kind of forgot about it for a second, but it's the Lifestylist Podcast Facebook group. And last I checked, there was, I think, 6,000 people in there or something. But and I'll dip in there and answer questions. And when I do solo shows, I'll take questions from the group and then answer them on the podcast. But I have noticed, especially after the COVID fiasco happened, that it's very heated in there. I go in and I'm like, whoa, off topic kind of, but it is difficult. It would be very time consuming to really curate, and as someone who's very anti-censorship also, to go in and tell people what they can and can't say also is weird. It's kind of a double-edged sword there. I'm like, screw censorship, unless I don't like what you're saying, so, but then it's my group. I don't know. It's confusing, but I think that's super smart. Have you noticed with your online community that it's had more engagement since people went into lockdown and had less of an opportunity to actually gather in person and hang out at a yoga class or a group meditation class or something?
Yeah. I mean, everything, the YouTube channel itself grew crazy amounts over 2020. Everything that we're doing really has been kind of, I don't want to say skyrocketing, but it's definitely grown more than I think it would have pre 2020.
Yeah, I think it's also useful for people that are geographically situated somewhere where they have a difficult time finding community. I have a lot of people that reach out to me on social media, and they're like, you guys are having so much fun in Austin or wherever, it's like, where do I find people like that? And I'm always kind of stumped. I'm like, I don't know, find a yoga studio, breathwork class, meditation. And someone will say, well, I live in Kansas City or wherever, and they're like, we don't have that. So I think that online community is really valuable for people that, live in more rural areas or just in a kind of less progressive town or city or something.
Yeah, I do think that, one of the blessings of 2020 and beyond has been that people are more willing to engage in online communities, online interaction. I mean, we've kind of had to, I mean, we've had my family has had, birthday parties for the young people in the group of over Zoom, and it's like, I'm sorry that your 3-year-old birthday is over Zoom, but is better than nothing.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so brutal. Yeah, we had one wake in my family in the beginning of this thing like that. And it was, I mean, thank God we're able to do it, but still, it was
Yeah.
it was awkward. I'm curious, and I'm don't want to tease the audience. I am going to really get into hypnosis stuff here, but I just like to get to know people and what makes you click. So you work with your husband, Les, and you guys have a podcast, the Mindful Movement Podcast.
Yep.
And he's the host, like I'm the host of this show, where he does interviews with all kinds of incredible people. You said he just interviewed Krishna Das, which is one I can't wait to hear. But you guys work together and
we do
ostensibly have a business together. How has that impacted your relationship? Has it been something that you've had to learn how to do and do right, or is it easy going all the time, or what?
It's definitely not easy going all the time. There's definitely been a learning process. But I think it's enabled us to grow together. As I said, I was 22 when we got married, and he was 22, and so he was 25. I should know those numbers, but we were like babies, and we had to grow up a lot when we got married and had kids, and then that kind of like just evened out. You get into a routine and a habitual way with your marriage and your partnership. And then when we started working together, there was a whole new layer of like communication that was necessary, and it really pushed us, I think, to work. We're working together, but work on ourselves separately so that we could work together as a partnership. And like all of my own issues around finances and his own issues around finances just really came to the surface in a big way when we had to manage business finances together. So I would say that is probably the biggest area of growth that we've both experienced.
Which one of you is the more frugal and conservative in that regard?
That's a good question.
It seems to be that's a common with business partners of all types, right? You have the spendy one, which would be me, and then you have the more frugal, conservative, prudent person in the operation.
I think in our business finances, it's a little different than in our personal finances. I tend to be more like frugal in personal finances, but then when it comes to business, like if let's say I wanted to be redeveloping the website and I found a company that I like trusted and fell in love with their services, I would be really quick to just say, okay, do it, whatever, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, let's do it. And he is like always playing devil's advocate. Like, do you really need that? Do you want to spend that much money?
Right.
And I'm like, well, are you telling me that I'm making a bad decision? Or are you just asking all the questions that you didn't know if I considered? And that's a big repeating conversation in our business relationship.
Right.
Because I'm like, let's just do it.
If you were lucky enough to hear episode 389 with Dr. Chris Wrench, you'll understand how important mitochondria is to your energy levels and overall health. So I'm always looking for ways to upgrade my mitochondria and age as slowly as possible through supplements and biohacks. My latest obsession in this category is something called MitoPure, a breakthrough postbiotic that activates your body's natural defense against aging and assists in mitophagy, or the clearing out of old bogus mitochondria. It's the first product to offer a precise dose of a compound derived from pomegranate called urolithin A, which is a truly groundbreaking discovery. In fact, MitoPure is the result of over 10 years of research by scientists at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. You can get your daily dose of 500 milligrams of MitoPure by using the berry powder, which I add to my smoothies, yogurt, and other drinks. And they also have a vanilla protein powder for muscle building, and also soft gels for on-the-go convenience. This is a powerful and super easy way to upgrade mitochondrial function, increase cellular energy, and improve muscle strength. If that sounds like a good plan to you, here's what you do to get on a MitoPure subscription. Visit timelinenutrition.com. And right now, as a special offer for you Lifestylist listeners, you can use the code Luke10 to get 10% off any 2, 4, or 12-month MitoPure plan at timelinenutrition.com. When you started getting into your own journey of personal development through yoga, meditation, and hypnosis, did your kids or have your kids gravitated toward the work, or was it one of those things that I'm going to rebel and I hate meditation because I'm 15 and I don't want to be like my parents?
Neither of them really have gotten into meditation like on a regular basis. My daughter definitely practices yoga occasionally, not super routinely. But they both, I think, lean towards a movement practice. Like my son's 15 and there's the whole like 15-year-old boy culture around like getting swole. Like we tease him, like you gotta eat your meat so you get your gains.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a joke in our house. But
it's a joke in our house too, between myself and Allison. I go to the gym like once a week and I'm like, I'm gonna get swole.
Yeah. Well, apparently in our area, there's like a big, my husband and I were calling it the black market for pre-workout. Like where teenage boys are like selling pre-workout to each other in high school because their parents like won't let them use it. And it's not like an illegal substance, but I'm like, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyhow, they have their own movement practices, which definitely tend to lean in the direction of like, a little bit of personal development, I would say, and kind of not a spiritual side, but like there's a self-discipline aspect to it that I think plays into personal development. But yeah, I don't think neither of them are really like rebellious. We tend to be very like open parents. Like we want them to be themselves, and so I think that lends itself into their exploration and their.
So you're not like, if one of them messes up, you're not grounding them and punishing them with a yoga set, or like you have to do a 45-minute meditation today.
No.
So around that movement, I've noticed in a lot of the stuff that you do that your background in Pilates and yoga instructing, obviously, and you have a studio. There's a lot of a big intersection between the mindfulness and meditation and the movement. How does that work? In the sense, like, let me say, I just found your work and I'm freaking out about something in my life and my nervous system is all jacked up and I want to calm down and I find one of your videos or podcasts. What's going to help me get back into my body and out of a stressed state, and what's your perspective on how those two meet?
I think they're beautifully intertwined for sure. And for me, I'm a very kinesthetic person. So movement is like my entrance into meditation. Always, I can't just like come in from work and sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to meditate now. That doesn't work for me. And for some people it does, but I need to like get out of my head and down into my body before I can really have a meditative experience. So, like yoga and Pilates are both what I would call like a mindful based movement, where it's like you're paying attention to what you're doing and your mind gives you the ability to make a change in your body. And because they're both mindful based movement practices, they're like a gateway or an entrance into the practice of mindfulness. But I think the reason why they are that way is that we just culturally, this is a generalization, but we live in our head, right? We are trying to solve problems. We're trying to be rational and fix things. And it's all logical, rational, and it's not emotional. And when you can drop into your body, then you can more accurately or more easily connect with your emotional state. So that would be my answer in terms of like why the movement components help with like mindfulness and meditation.
How do you integrate breath
Mm.
into your practice? I've seen that you have some breathing exercises. I haven't seen anything I would label as like breath work,
Mhm.
you know, like more intense breath
Yeah.
work. But what kind of breath practices do you teach? And
Yeah.
do you have one now that you could share with us again?
Oh, sure.
I like to find applicable short practices that I can give the audience
Mhm.
where they could be like, cool, I'm going to try that next time I feel like I
Yeah.
need to get back in my body or just get present because I'm not feeling comfortable.
Well, in terms of integrating breath with movement practices, that's basically what Pilates and yoga both do, right? It's like the breath is dictating the movement. It's keeping the rhythm for you. So that's how I would integrate it into movement. And then in terms of like my hypnotherapy practice, I use breath as a tool to regulate the nervous system. So really simple exercises that anyone could do at any time, really. One of my favorite things is humming on exhale. So like, actually, I was doing this on my way over here because I was a little nervous, you know? So I feel like the butterflies in my stomach and I'm like, okay, I can manage this. I'm an adult. I'm confident. I'm good at what I do. And, you're talking to myself a little bit, but then just deep breath in through the nose. And then on the exhale, you're making a humming noise and it's vibrating in your throat and it's interacting with the vagus nerve and allowing you to, or in this case, it was me, allowing me to drop into more of the rest and digest phase of the nervous system, as opposed to what I was really feeling was like fight, flight, freeze, that kind of anxious energy. So that's one of my favorite practices. And actually, you'll hear it throughout our house at home. Like, everyone in the house does it at some point. And
that's a really great reminder. It brings me back to the many years I was very committed to Kundalini yoga. And I never, which is now shrouded in controversy because the person that brought it here was apparently really creepy. But nonetheless, I would go to these classes, and I remember in the beginning, it was strange to me singing mantras in a language that I didn't understand. And there were all kinds of different kind of humming and different ways of breathing and mudras and things you're doing with your hands. And it just like, if I would get caught up in my head, I would think like, this is so ridiculous. What is the purpose of this? Like, who made this up? And I think a lot of it probably was made up by this guy, Yogi Bhajan, because there's no record of it in like a historical context, really. But nonetheless, after those damn 90-minute classes, I was always in the best freaking mood.
Yeah.
And I have personally experienced that, even just a humming sound or singing mantra, that it does really do something to your brain and your nervous system. I'm sure science has some explanation for it now, but it is strangely effective. So thank you for reminding me of that. And like vocal toning, I've been to breathwork classes where there used to be this place in Manhattan called the Womb Center, WOOM, and I think they've since closed, but they did like a vocal toning, then pretty intense kind of holotropic breath work where you're on your back, and then they went into this beautiful sound bath. And the vocal toning, super awkward, because they just invite everyone to be like, like whatever sound you want to make, and the whole room's doing it. No one's really in key or in sync. It's super weird. But next thing you know, you're in this altered state, and there's this resonance amongst the other participants, and it's just one of those kind of woo-woo things that's not really explainable, but has a discernible effect.
Yeah.
So that's a great takeaway. I like that. So humming, guys, on the exhale. Very cool. And so not complicated.
No. It's free. It's not complicated. It's easy. You might feel awkward at first, but like my son gets the hiccups sometimes and he'll start doing humming breaths and like very quickly they just go away.
That's
you
super
know?
cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for illuminating that for us.
Yeah.
I did interview a gentleman at one point whose name was Rich something. Forgive me, Rich. I forget his last name offhand, but I've got 400 episodes or something. But we did an episode about Yoga Nidra.
Mm.
And I think I've done a couple classes over the years of that. Is that
Mhm.
something you teach or have experience with? Could you break that down for us?
Yeah, I love Yoga Nidra. So I have a couple practices on the YouTube channel that you can listen to. The sort of, I don't know if it's a scientific statement or like if it's just hearsay, but they say that it's 1 hour of Yoga Nidra is equivalent to 4 hours of deep sleep in terms of what, the nervous system response and the healing of your body. So it's pretty simple. You get into a super like comfy, relaxed state, and lots of like bolsters and blankets to make sure that you're not like holding yourself, right? You're being held in a way. So you get into a comfortable position, and then there is a like a sequence that you're going through that takes you through breath and like a body scan and scan of thoughts. And there's lots of different components that could be, taken into the practice. It just depends on what the specific intention is. But it gets you into a super relaxed state where you're like between sleeping and awake, where you might go in and out of like listening consciousness. So you might feel like you're sleeping, but you're not actually like truly asleep.
Have you heard people refer to it as the napping yoga? Is that a thing?
They'll say like yogic sleep. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The couple times I've done it, I really enjoyed it. That's probably my favorite state of consciousness is that sort of mind asleep, body awake, maybe, which I always
Yeah.
just blanket term like theta brainwaves, but I don't know that that's true. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a very cool practice.
Super relaxing.
Yeah,
And
it is.
healing.
So let's see here. Where do I want to go with this? Well, I guess I want to get into actually one more thing on meditation. As you being someone who didn't come into it with a great deal of enthusiasm and sort of learned how to access it through movement and stuff. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions and blocks around meditation for people that have that meme in their head, like, I tried meditating, I can't meditate, or I'm not a meditator.
Yeah.
When I believe anyone has the capacity to meditate.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is the idea that you're going to like stop your thoughts and you're going to have like a totally blank mind. I think that expectation will set you up for failure because your mind just doesn't stop thinking, right? You might have what I would call like the gap, right? Between your thoughts, the space might get a little bit longer. There might be a little more silence. And then over time, you might just get better at not following the thoughts into stories or judgments or, wherever your mind will take you, like, oh, I have to do that thing on my to-do list. And then, minutes later, you realize you went through like 30 things on your to-do list, where the practice is, about starting over. You recognize, okay, I had this thought, I had something on my to-do list. That was me thinking. And then you come back to whatever your focal point is. And in the beginning, there might be like, I don't know, 40, 50 times of starting over again. And eventually with practice, you might go down to like, okay, I had to come back to my breath 10 times. And that's not to say that like the number of times that you have to start over is like an indicator of your success, but you just get better at it. Like any skill, right? You wouldn't expect to play the piano for the first time and be able to play Bach. You have to start at the beginning. You have to start with like, I need to learn the notes on the piano and then the scales and then, all the different practice skills that you acquire. And so like to expect like enlightenment the first time you sit down for for meditation is not realistic and not.
That's very good points. And I think when I started meditating, somewhere I picked up this false understanding of it, that it was like stopping your mind from thinking. And I found that to be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Because as you said, I had a meditation teacher that framed it like this. He said, Luke, imagine lying there or sitting there and trying to make your heart not beat.
Right.
It's like the mind thinks that's what it does,
Right.
So I learned this Vedic meditation where you silently repeat a mantra, and you don't exert any effort to not think at all. You just very gently nudge yourself back into the mantra. And I was like, okay. So if the mind wants to think, you just let it think. And then if you notice it's doing that, you just do this other thing. It's almost like a replacement. And then you do eventually start to find those gaps. So I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
So we did this, what would be called a hypnotherapy session. Okay. So as I alluded to in the beginning, so you come in, you start asking me about what's going on in my life. We're talking about different blocks or challenges that I want to overcome, however, of whatever magnitude. Nothing too crazy going on in life right now, but there's always room for fine tuning. And then you're taking copious notes the whole time.
I take a lot of notes.
Yeah, you're like writing down everything I say, and I'm kind of like, oh, where's this going to go later? Then I lie down on the couch, I put my eye mask on, and there wasn't like the hocus pocus element that you would think of like a stage hypnotist, right? Where they're like counting down or putting the stopwatch in front of your face, or like a lot of finger snapping, and you're going deeper, and now you're deep, it was just kind of super chill.
Yeah.
But I did go into very relaxed state where I could still hear you and I could still respond. And it was really interesting to see or experience subjectively that the answers to the questions that you asked me came very quickly and they were very clear, and I didn't have to fish for them or ruminate on them. I mean, I intentionally did not do so. I could have sat there and thought about it and kind of mentated.
But that would defeat the purpose.
So when you're sitting with someone, you do this remotely too, right?
I do, yeah.
You can I imagine the same thing would happen if someone's on Zoom lying down listening to you at home.
Yep.
What are you doing? Like how are you, what's the mojo behind it that's getting one's mind to calm down and give them access to the subconscious so you can go in and rearrange things?
Well, I'm not doing any rearranging.
Okay. Brainwash me, please.
Let me just start with that. But I mean, it's essentially helping you to get your nervous system to see the signals of safety so that you can get into the rest and digest, or the parasympathetic state. And in that state, you have a greater access to your subconscious. So you can more easily communicate with and understand your subconscious. And you'll hear me say things like, let your conscious, logical thinking mind like rest and kind of be on the sidelines of the experience so that you can more easily access the subconscious part of your mind. So there's nothing like super fancy about it. It's just helping you to relax. Signals of safety would be like the feeling of the support beneath you to connect with the fact that you are, laying on a couch being held, you're being supported, and it's okay to like let down your guard is not really the right phrase, but like to let go, to relax, to really allow the process to unfold as it will. So yeah, nothing super fancy, just getting relaxed and using words and energy and your own attention and focus to get you into that relaxed state.
Did you have to practice your hypnotherapist voice. You have a very, like, when I've listened to your guided meditations and stuff, I'm like, man, she's great at voiceovers. You might have a second career in voiceovers. I mean, did you have to put any, because you're very good at it, did you have to put any kind of thought or effort into how you deliver what you're saying? Meaning, you're not stammering, saying like, your words are very economically chosen and sparse and very direct. There's no clutter there. That's my experience of you. Listening to your guided meditations and also today, is that something, did you have to ferret out any kind of nervousness or antsiness within you to just be like, I am the present voice that's going to take you there?
Well, I appreciate that, because I do think I have worked on like the economy of words. And sometimes I get a little wordy, but I mean, I think experience, number one, has helped get to that point. But I would say that I tend to myself kind of drop into a meditative state, or, I'm not closing my eyes and just being, but I'm calm. I'm like, when I suggest for you to take a deep breath, I'm going to do the same thing myself, because I need that, just as much as you do. Because if I came to your session and I was all nervous and, I was anxious, then you would feel that. And I definitely don't want you to feel that, because that would be, counterproductive. So I guess a little bit of both. Like, I think I just naturally have kind of a nurturing personality. But I also work to get myself into a calm, regulated state before.
Here's a hot winter tip for you. It's called Organifi Gold. If you've ever had a golden latte, you know how bomb this type of herbal elixir tastes and feels. I've been on this stuff for years and have no plans of stopping anytime soon. It's got 9 superfoods like turmeric, ginger, reishi mushrooms, and tons of other great stuff that support rest, relaxation, recovery, and repair. I blend mine up with warm water and either ghee or coconut oil. It's also low sugar, organic, and super calming when you need to get your chill on. It's like a warm dessert, except it's actually really good for you. Organifi Gold is, of course, completely organic. It's also gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, vegan, and of course, thank God, non-GMO. So if you're looking for an alternative to sweets and coffee late in the day or at night, Organifi Gold is the ticket. You can get your gold over at Organifi.com/lifestylist. That's ORGANIFI, Organifi with an I. Organifi.com/lifestylist. And they are going to give you 20% off anything in the store if you use the code Lifestylist. Again, that's Organifi.com/lifestylist, and the code is Lifestylist. Do you ever have anyone fall asleep when you're doing a hypnosis session?
I haven't had anyone fall asleep in a hypnosis session, because we're dialoguing, right? I'm going to be asking you questions. But I definitely all the time. And like, if I do a guided yoga nidra practice, like with a group of people, all the time, or like a group hypnosis, it happens. Like, you'll hear like kind of like a little bit of a snore, like from different sides of the room. But you just get used to walking over towards that person and like speaking a tiny bit louder.
Right.
So they get a little like nudge.
And going, you're snoring. I think when some people think about hypnosis, again, going back to that kind of carnival sideshow cruise ship, I think that's the first time I saw hypnosis on a cruise ship. And it's, they put the guy, they ask his permission. He's up on stage, he goes under, and they're like, they trick him into, well, I don't know, trick him, but make him think he's a monkey or something crazy or ridiculous, or that he has no clothes on in front of the crowd and this kind of stuff. And I think some people are afraid of being vulnerable or impressionable, or that something could be done against their will or something like that. So what's the difference between the sort of trusted safety of true hypnotherapy, where the intention is not to entertain folks with bells and whistles, but really to get in and help them to break free of something they're working on?
Well, stage hypnosis is meant for entertainment, and it's designed that way.
And is some of it legit? I mean,
well, your mind will never really, it will never take a suggestion that you don't agree with.
Okay.
So in stage hypnosis, the hypnotist is trained to be able to look for cues for suggestibility. And the people who get up on stage want to be part of the entertainment, right? And a hypnotist can see that and understand and see those signals. So they wouldn't get up on stage without like being willing to act like a monkey.
Right.
Which is the same is true in a session that's like one-on-one. You could never receive suggestions from me that you didn't believe and want. Like I've done group hypnosis where it's about healing, and there are men and women in the room. And so like I'll ask for, in a group setting, I'll ask for people's desired affirmations or suggestions that they want to hear. So like, what do you want to heal from? And you might have a woman who is like, I want support with fertility. And if a man hears that, right, like it's just not going to be relevant to them. Or if, a man
or a man could be like, I could help you out with that.
Right. Maybe they meet and they get together, and that they're manifesting fertility.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. But like a woman would hear something relevant to a man and it would be not absorbed. It would be like, they would just not even hear it even. So your mind can't take suggestions that you don't believe. Right. So if someone came to me and said, can you work with my husband? I want him to quit smoking. Well, my answer would be, does he want to quit smoking? Because if the answer is no, then no, I can't help him. Right? Like,
yeah,
he has to want to quit smoking for me to be able to use hypnosis to help him.
Well, when we were doing our session today, even though I was in kind of a foggy, relaxed state, I was still very aware and cognizant of everything you said.
Right.
It wasn't like I was in some dream state and was lost my faculties or something, right? I was just there enough to be able to, she asked this question. Let me bring up the answer. But yeah, I didn't get any sense that like I was out of control or that.
Yeah. And all those notes that I was taking were your words, your desires, what you want to feel, and the life that you want to, make happen and manifest. And so I'm literally saying your words back to you. And that's part of the reason why it's so powerful to have a personalized session, because if I were to make a generic recording, which I have plenty of on YouTube, it's generic. It's not like, the feeling in, like if you were to describe like what confidence feels like to you, it might sound and feel very different than how I might describe it. So when you hear those words back in your personalized recording, they mean more. They resonate with you and your energy more than if I were to try to describe it based on my experience. And that's why, these personalized sessions are so powerful.
How often in your work with people one-on-one are they looking to overcome a physical limitation or a persistent pain or disease or something like that?
I think it's probably a smaller percentage than some of the other issues. Like I mean, maybe this is just because this is what I love to do. These are the people that come to me, but I love to work with people that have like emotional blocks, whether it's around anxiety or depression or confidence or money. Like they're not a tangible or measurable, where like I have worked with people that they're dealing with cancer or other, one woman I worked with recently, she was struggling with some chronic illness around like histamine. Like she would have allergic reactions to everything. And actually I worked with another man who had a similar response, but his was more around like temperature, but it was kind of like he was almost allergic to air conditioning. But yeah, so
tell him not to move to Texas.
yeah.
There, you're cured.
You're cured. So like I do work with people around like medical issues, physiological issues, but more often I would say a bigger percentage of my practice is around more of the emotional issues. But again, that might just be because that's what I really like to work with.
Yeah. Well, I asked because I wonder in my own life and just people that I know that have some sort of chronic pain or chronic issue, and it's impossible to quantify and know for sure, but how much of it is the mind, right? How much of it is the subconscious and limiting beliefs or, whatever is causing that to manifest, and how much is actually just genetic or environmental, because I know that trauma, for example, can really express itself and all sorts of physical issues, and then people heal their trauma however they go about doing so, and magically that physical symptom goes away. It's like your body's this like tape recorder, right? That just
it
records
on.
all the things, and I've had sort of a spontaneous healings where I was working on something emotionally, and then I was like, traced it back to something that's been going on physically. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's all interconnected, right? Like there's a book that's the body keeps the score. Yeah, like
so many of my guests mention that book, and I'm always like, oh yeah, that book, just because I've heard the name.
Heard it so many
I think
times.
I need to read it, and if the author's around, I need to track them down and interview that person because it seems to be a very influential book.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very true. Like you have to feel what's going on in order to heal it, right? You can't heal what you don't actually experience.
You have a lot of meditations around getting restorative sleep, like things that help people fall asleep and stay asleep and stuff. Do you work with people that have sleep issues with hypnosis?
Yeah.
I imagine that's probably something common.
Very common. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's just the most needed topic that is on our channel, but I mean, like we have videos out there that are sleep recordings that are, I don't know, like 6-7 million views.
Damn.
It's like people need help sleeping.
Wow.
Especially over the last 2 years, like stress level, mental health, it's all like been skyrocketing. And like we have, I don't know what the statistics are, but it definitely higher percentage of mental health issues over the last 2 years than ever before. People need help sleeping.
Do you think hypnosis is the way that you best help people with that, or the guided meditations that actually facilitate you falling asleep as you listen to them?
Well, I mean, I think that all of my guided meditations, well, not all of them, but a good percentage of them have like roots in hypnosis, right? I mean, the state of mind is the same. Like we get to certain brainwave states, and you could categorize it as meditation or hypnosis. The difference is that there's, like I said earlier, like you have a goal, you have something that you're doing in hypnosis, right? We're implanting, for lack of a better word, some affirmations or suggestions, statements of belief. So that's a little different than a state of meditation. But I think probably most of the sleep recordings out there have some components or techniques of hypnosis in it.
In terms of trauma as an underlying issue, which is something I'm just discovering more about in my own life and in the work that I do here, it's just like it's the elephant in the room for so many people's problems, whether emotional, physical, spiritual. Is it common that as you work with clients in hypnosis that things come up, heavy things come up because you're kind of opening the subconscious and they're willingly allowing themselves to look deeper? Is that a common occurrence? And how do you kind of hold that with people?
Yeah, I would say that it comes up a lot for sure. And, trauma is relative to the person. So what we do in hypnosis is, obviously you're not reliving the experience, you're reviewing it. And I always say, like, there's a layer of separation in the processing of it. And the work is around changing the interpretation of the event or changing the relationship with the event. And that's what allows you to kind of release the hold of the trauma on the person, like as if they're still in that state of trauma, so that your nervous system can kind of recalibrate and you can respond more presently, as opposed to if you have a trigger, it's almost like you're responding as if you're still in that trauma.
Right.
Right. So you need to be able to recalibrate or change your interpretation, change your relationship with that experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you just think about just the term PTSD, I was thinking about this the other day, post-traumatic, right? It's like you have the event, which you could sort of couch as arbitrary from a certain perspective, but then it's how you hold that event after. The post part is where you really get hurt, right? And the kind of support you have or lack, the meaning that you create around that experience. So like the difference between being in a brutal car accident and being subject to physical violence, right? They're both acts of physical violence, but I would assume the meaning one creates around the car accident is going to have much different repercussions and after effects than an act of physical violence, right?
Well,
but ultimately, like the same thing's happening to your body, but your psyche is holding that in a different way. And afterward, in the processing of that is where that kind of re-traumatizing can happen, right?
Yeah. But interestingly enough, like you're using this example of a car accident, you could have one person or two different people have the same exact experience, and what they do with it after that event might be vastly different. And, one person could go down the route of like living in the state of fear because of that event. That event could become traumatic for them because of their interpretation of it, their experience around it. Whereas the same person or the other person who has the same event might be able to get over it very quickly and then never think about it again. Same exact event, two different people, two different routes, because of how they interpret that same event.
So in hypnosis, you have the opportunity not to relive it and be re-traumatized, but to recontextualize it and change your perspective on it.
Yeah. Right. And you could say, like, if we keep using the experience of this car accident, well, that person who has, what you might say is PTSD or how they respond to it after the event, they might think that like safety is just not available at all. Like they might live in a constant state of fear of their like life. So if we can help that person to like reinterpret, like that was a one-time thing, how many times do you go in a car without having a car accident and so forth, and help them to create new beliefs around it, new beliefs about themselves in the world around that experience, then they can, let go of the traumatic.
Yeah, we did some of that. We did some of that today. I mean, not around trauma, but just you took me back to different touch points. Well, what age were you when you felt like this or had this belief system start to develop? And and I remember kind of going back into it and just the adult me now going, that's not actually true. Like whatever it was that I was believing at 10 is like, no, there's no empirical evidence to support that at all. It was just like a story of meaning that was made up at the time, but it still informed, behaviors and feelings today, So it's really interesting how the subconscious mind works like that. Super cool stuff.
Yeah.
Have you heard of colostrum? Well, it's been one of my top superfoods for the past decade. It's likely one of the best tasting and definitely most nutrient dense and novel foods on the planet. My personal colostrum of choice has always been Surthrival. They sent me their 3 new flavors of colostrum this week, and of course I immediately opened all 3 jugs and made a drink of each with only spring water as the base, and they were insanely good, just rich, creamy, delicious. I'm now, of course, obsessed. The new flavors are enhanced with organic cacao powder, strawberry juice powder, and organic vanilla. And I got to say, even their plain unflavored colostrum was already addictively delicious, so the new flavors are, for me, just an added bonus. What I like about colostrum, in addition to it just being such a delicious ingredient in just about any smoothie you can dream of, is that it also provides protein and immune factors in their natural whole food form, which is, of course, the optimal choice. What I like about colostrum, in addition to it being such a delicious ingredient in just about any smoothie you can dream of, is that it also provides protein and immune factors in their natural whole food form. So much so, in fact, that it's often referred to as immune milk. And for those of you that like studies, the studies have shown that colostrum is 3 times more powerful than the vaccine against flu virus. So this might just be nature's best pandemic prevention supplement. Plus, it also aids digestion and is often used in cases of leaky gut, IBS, Crohn's, and ulcerative colitis. And Surthrival has set the standard for the highest quality USA-sourced grass-fed colostrum available. You can think of Surthrival colostrum as a supercharged protein powder, but more functional and sophisticated. But not so sophisticated that kids won't eat it. In fact, kids actually love it. And when I have one, this will likely be the first food they eat after mom's milk. You can get your colostrum now at surthrival.com and use the code Luke for 10% off your order. That's Surthrival, Surthrival, like survive and thrive at the same time. Surthrival.com, and again, the code is Luke. Thank you for sharing all of this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
As I said, you work with clients on your own. I saw online you can like book a session. What does that look like? How does it work? How can people find that want to have the experience that I had today?
Sure. Well, you can book a session through our website, mindfulmovement.com. And I did create a code with your name, Luke Story.
Word.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So anyone listening gets 15% off.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So is it the Mindful Movement?
The mindfulmovement.com is where you can find everything is on that website, like all of our videos and podcasts and courses and where you can book a session.
Okay, cool.
So that's there.
And then if they use the code Luke Story, they can get 15% off
for a session.
Sessions with you. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I love when guests come on and they like hook it up for the audience, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also like I was just talking to my husband about this, that like I feel like I don't ever want finances to be the reason that someone can't get help, right? So I've sort of given scholarships or discounts to people because it's unfortunate that, money can be an issue. So I don't want that ever to be an issue. So, I'll give a discount, or if someone needs more than that, just reach out to me for sure. But yeah, so in terms of the process, you purchase a session and then super easy. You just look at the calendar. You can book your own appointment. It's about 2 hours. And the first half of it is really all just conversation. Like I get to know you. I understand the triggers of whatever the issue are that you're experiencing. I get a little backstory in terms of childhood upbringing, dynamics, family relationships. And then the part that I really love to talk about is what you want, right? So like if I could make all of your dreams come true, how would you feel in this dream life? What would you be doing? What would you be, experiencing? And that conversation becomes your personalized recording. And then we go into the session, which is usually like an hour long, give or take. And we'll look at, first I'll help you to get into that relaxed state that we were talking about. And then we'll look at some scenes from your past, some events that might have caused you to form a belief about yourself. That belief is now kind of running the show in the subconscious background. And it's causing whatever the issue is that you're coming to me with.
I think that's an important distinction with the positioning of the language, where there were times when we were doing kind of the intake portion of it, and I'm like, well, I don't want this and I don't want that, and I want to get rid of this and get rid of that. And you're like, what do you want though? Like,
it's usually harder to figure that out.
Yeah, it took a little, I mean, not too much effort, but I was like, oh yeah, I am kind of focusing on what I don't want, right? Which is kind of giving that more energy.
Yeah. Well, and it's okay to like go through that process of, I want less stress. I want less struggle. Okay. Well, if you don't have the stress and the struggle, then what would be in its place? Like, what would you be feeling? What would you be experiencing? And, that's why I'm here to ask you lots of questions. And
well, when we're in the session though, I mean, granted, I wasn't totally all there, but I think almost everything you said or the inquiries that you were presenting to me were on the flip side of that. About the part that you do want.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, Luke, you want to, get rid of your fear or whatever, it was like, yeah, and we're going to have confidence. It was like all of those positive.
Yeah.
Because the inverse of all those words.
That's what you're focusing on. That's what you want. And we know that the mind loves what's familiar and it does well with repetition. So when you are reminding yourself on a regular basis that you're confident and you're, creative or whatever the qualities are that you want, it's kind of like you're tending to the garden of your mind, and you need to feed the plants to keep them alive. And that's what we're doing with the recording is you're listening to the recording, on a regular basis, you're having repetition and familiarity with those new beliefs. But if I put in there, what you don't want, then that's what you'd be focusing on.
Right. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
When you record the one-on-one sessions that you do with people, what's your recommendation in terms of how often they listen back to it, and for how long? Back in LA, I was doing some sessions, and I found it to be really useful. I just kind of replaced my meditation with it for a period of time. I would wait till I was very impressionable, right? And I would fall asleep to it, or I'd listen to it first thing in the morning. And I think it helped kind of lock it in. What do you do in terms of working with people with that?
Well, definitely I recommend every day if possible. Although, like I know life happens, so it's not like you're going to get a smack on the hand if you miss it or whatever. But every day if possible. And then I usually use 21 days, and that's kind of a general recommendation because that's what the studies have shown. It takes 21 days to form a new habit.
Oh, right.
But like, if you look at the studies, it's a vast difference from one end of the spectrum to the other. And they're just taking, 21 days is the average. So I would start there. And then my recommendation is always to just do what's best for you. So part of this process is understanding yourself and forming a better internal relationship with yourself. So if that process is, going well, then you'll know like, okay, it's not quite fully settled in or fully sunken in. I need to keep listening to this. Or, you listen for 21 days, you feel great. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm starting to backslide a little. And you have the recording forever. So that would be a good opportunity to, pull it out and listen to it again.
I like that as a benchmark though, like having a set time rather than just, hey, yeah, listen to it here and there when you feel like it. I know for me, it's like if I did a session with you and you're like, all right, Luke, I encourage you strongly to do this for 21 days. I'm probably going to put on my calendar or habituate myself to it and get it done. So I think that's really a good way to do it. And
also it's like you're sending a message to yourself that like, I'm worthy of doing the work to get to this place that I desire. I'm worthy of spending, 20 minutes, 15 minutes a day taking care of myself. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, there's it's an affirmative action for oneself. I got one more question for you. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced your life and your work?
Well, I would say the first book that I read that really pushed me into the self-development or personal development it's called Emotional Chaos to Clarity. The author is Philip Moffitt. I think he works out in like Spirit Rock in California. But, really simple stuff that it was easy to implement and like understand. And I think I've read that book like 4 or 5 times, just because it just resonated with me. Sometimes you just need a certain teacher, right? Like all of these things have been said over and over again for hundreds of years, but like the way that he presented them was really perfect for me at the time. So that was one of the early books that I read that was really useful for me to kind of go down that route. My children are always teachers still. Like my daughter's 18, and I think about how I was at 18. Like I just met my husband now, when I turned 18, and I'm just like fascinated by how confident she is and open and like just willing to live and receive and connect. And it's just really beautiful. And, when I find myself resisting with my children, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I have to step back and, like check in with myself before I go interact with them on the topic. Like if she does something, like she just went out with a guy recently, and I was like, oh
boy.
Right. Like I start to have a response, and I have to like check in and be like, okay, she's 18 years old. She's a grown up in a way. And like, this is good for her to interact with other people her age and like have practice in relationships. And so I definitely think I've learned a ton and still continue to learn from my children and, my experiences with them and watching their experiences as they grow up. And so, yeah, that would be probably my biggest teachers.
Awesome. Well, you have
children.
2 kids, so that counts for 2. So
yeah.
if we're technically speaking, that's 3. Thank you.
Yeah. And they're very different too. Like I have a daughter and a son, and they're very different.
I hear that a lot.
I learn a lot from different things from each of them.
I think almost everyone I know has kids. I can't think of anyone without kids, and they all say that same thing. And one of my friends has 6 kids, and they're like, each one is vastly different from all the others. I'm like, how many can you have? And they still come out different, I love that. Well, thank you so much for making the time to come sit with me today. And thank you for the session.
Yeah,
it was
my pleasure.
Really awesome. And I can't wait to kind of see how that begins to unfold. I felt like we were pretty focused and on point today,
Yeah.
I mean, we started out, I was like, well, I got some foot pain, and we just kind of moved past that and, got a bit deeper.
I think it's important to bring all of the things to the table and then assess like what needs your attention the most. And that's usually how I proceed.
And I think we found it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So the mindfulmovement.com is where they can find you. What about social media plugs? Anywhere else where we can find your stuff?
I mean, YouTube, we have lots of things going on.
The Behemoth YouTube channel you've created?
Yeah. And I've started to move a lot of like what I might put on Instagram over onto YouTube also, just because that's where, the majority of our audience is. And I don't know, I might have to just lay off the other social media platforms because it's a lot.
I know.
To be everywhere.
Well, you did something super smart and like see what's working, how you're reaching people, and just focus on that. I mean, that's what I do with the podcast. It seems to be the thing I enjoy the most. So that's the lane I picked, and I just kind of keep charging ahead, come what will.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. As they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap, my friends. Now is time for the wrap party. On to next week's episode. Let's keep it moving. Number 400. There's got to be some numerology magic in that. I don't know. When I just read that number 400, it sounds big. It sounds important. And next week's episode most certainly is. It's called Solving the Microdosing Mystery and the third wave of psychedelics with Paul Austin from the company Third Wave. Now, I've been getting so many questions about people tiptoeing through their curiosity, wanting to explore specifically the world of microdosing. And one of the problems with that particular practice is, of course, access. Many people live in communities and cultures or different geographic locations where that seems to be an impossibility. And Paul has made it really his life's work to educate people about the safe, hear that word, safe, there's an asterisk there, safe and effective use of psychedelics, whether macro or microdosing. So the Third Wave project that he's created is absolutely incredible for doing just that. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. So if you want a balanced, sane conversation about the emerging, well, actually re-emerging field of psychedelic therapy and the ceremonial and clinical use of these incredible medicines, next week's episode number 400 is for you. Okay, before I leave you, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you know that I recently created my very own blue blocking eyewear line? Yep, I finally did. It took me about a year to get this thing off the ground, and I am super stoked about it, so I want to share it with you. You can find prescription, readers, and regular frames at the following website, gildedbylukestory.com. That's GILDED, gildedbylukestory.com. Listen, man, toxic junk blue light is a huge problem, and part of my mission is to solve it with style. So get over to gildedbylukestory.com and grab yourself a pair. I'll see you next week.